Welcome to rare breed brotherhood. Most men beg, plead, or chase when a woman leaves them. A Sigma male, he does the opposite. He vanishes, not as a tactic, but because he knows his worth. He doesn't fight for someone who didn't value him. He doesn't lower himself to seek validation. And that's exactly why women always come back. At first, she believes she made the right choice. She thinks she can replace him, that she'll find someone better. But time proves her wrong. The men she thought would be upgrades turn out to be ordinary, predictable, and needy. The thrill fades, and reality sets in. She didn't just lose a man, she lost a rare breed of man. That's when the regret kicks in. She realizes his silence wasn't weakness, it was strength. His ability to move on wasn't an act, it was self-respect. And now she wants back in. Not necessarily because she loves him, but because she can't stand the idea that he was never broken by her absence. But here's the truth. A Sigma never looks back. He thrives without those who doubted him. He becomes stronger, sharper, more untouchable. And that's the ultimate revenge. Success in silence. If you've ever doubted your worth or questioned why people return after walking away, this video is for you. Watch closely, because by the end you'll understand why a Sigma male is never truly forgotten. Number 1. His indifference destroys her ego. She was used to men reacting. When relationships ended, there was always an aftermath. Anger, sadness, pleading, maybe even a desperate attempt to win her back. She expected the same from him. She thought he would fight for her, argue, or at least show some kind of emotion. But he didn't. He simply walked away without a word, without hesitation, without looking back. At first, she shrugged it off, told herself he just needed time, that any day now he'd reach out. But the days passed, then weeks, and the silence remained. No texts, no calls, not even a sign that he missed her. It was as if she had never existed in his world. That's when the discomfort set in. She wasn't just missing him, she was questioning herself. Why didn't he care? Was she not important? Did she mean nothing? It wasn't just about losing him, it was about losing the power she thought she had. The moment she realized he truly didn't need her, something inside her shifted. She started watching him from a distance, hoping for some hint of regret, some sign of weakness. But he wasn't broken. He wasn't sulking. He was thriving, living his life as if nothing had happened. And that's when the truth hit her. She had no effect on him. That kind of indifference does more damage than anger ever could. When a man rages or begs, it feeds the ego. It confirms that she mattered. But when a Sigma male walks away with nothing but silence, it sends a different message. She was never as important as she thought. And that realization, it's unbearable. Number 2. She thought she could replace him. She couldn't. She walked away thinking she had options. She believed finding someone else like him would be easy. Someone with the same presence, the same quiet strength, the same energy that made him impossible to ignore. She assumed there were plenty of men out there who could offer her what he did, maybe even more. But reality hit her fast. At first, she distracted herself. She surrounded herself with new people, entertained new men, convinced herself she was moving forward. But something felt off. The more time passed, the more she noticed it. There was no one like him. The men she met lacked depth. They followed the crowd, needed validation, played the same predictable games. They said the right things, but none of it carried weight. There was no mystery, no challenge, no quiet dominance that made her feel both excited and uncertain at the same time. They weren't him. Slowly, the realization set in. He wasn't just another man, he was rare. The way he carried himself, the way he stood firm in who he was, the way he made her feel without even trying, that wasn't something she could replace. And the more she searched for it in others, the clearer it became. She had lost something she would never find again. And now, as much as she wants to go back, she knows she can't. Because a Sigma never waits, never looks back, never gives second chances to those who took him for granted. And that's a lesson she'll never forget. Number 3. She sees him thriving without her. She expected him to struggle. Maybe not beg, but at least feel the loss. She thought he'd take time to process, to linger in the past, to show some sign that she had mattered. But instead of breaking down, he elevated. There was no mourning period, no late-night messages, no signs of regret. He simply shifted his focus, poured his energy into his goals, and kept moving forward, without hesitation. She sees it in the way he carries himself, in the way he grows. His life didn't stop when she left. If anything, it got better. At first she tells herself it's an act, that he's just pretending. But as time passes, it becomes clear, this isn't for show. He's not faking happiness, he's actually thriving. His career is advancing, his confidence is unshaken, and worst of all, he's attracting new women without even trying. She thought she was special, irreplaceable. But now she watches as other women gravitate toward him, drawn to the same qualities she once overlooked. And while she's stuck in the past, replaying memories, he's out there creating new ones, with someone else. That's when it truly sinks in. He didn't just move on, he leveled up. And she? She's still standing in the same place, realizing too late that she was never the reason for his success. He was always destined to rise, with or without her. Number 4. The challenge returns. She wants to win him again. She thought she had him figured out. At one point she felt in control. She knew how to pull him in, how to make him react, how to keep him orbiting around her emotions. But then something changed. He stopped playing the game. Instead of fighting for her attention, he simply walked away, indifferent, as if she never held any power over him to begin with. At first, she convinced herself she didn't care. But as time passed, a strange feeling crept in. The need to win him back. Not because she suddenly loved him, not because she had a change of heart, but because she couldn't stand the thought of losing control. Other men were predictable. They gave in too easily, responded to every little test, and played right into her hands. But the Sigma, he was a different beast. He didn't argue, he didn't explain, he didn't react. His silence was a statement, and it burned more than words ever could. She starts testing the waters, liking his posts, sending casual messages, trying to reopen the door she once slammed shut. But he doesn't bite. His lack of response makes her want him even more. The harder he is to reach, the more her mind fixates on him. It's no longer about romance. It's about ego, dominance, and unfinished business. She doesn't want to rekindle something real. She wants to know she still has the power to break him. But this time, the game is over. And that reality, it's her greatest defeat. Number 5. She regrets underestimating his worth. She thought he was just another man. He didn't chase her like the others, didn't overwhelm her with constant attention, didn't try to impress her with empty words. He was different, but she didn't recognize the value in that. Instead, she mistook his independence for indifference, his confidence for arrogance, his self-sufficiency for a lack of care. At first, it didn't bother her. She believed she could find better, someone more emotionally available, someone who would make her feel like the center of their world. So she left, thinking she was upgrading. But over time, reality started sinking in. The men she moved on to were predictable, too easy to figure out. They sought her validation, catered to her every whim, and gave her exactly what she thought she wanted. But instead of feeling empowered, she felt nothing. The excitement wore off quickly. She started noticing the difference. These men lacked the depth, the silent strength, the quiet confidence that had made the Sigma stand apart. She realized that what she once dismissed as coldness was actually emotional control, that what she called detachment was unshakable self-worth. And now, looking back, she regrets it. Not because she lost a man, but because she lost a rare kind of man. He wasn't just another option. He was an anomaly, and she was blind to it. But the hardest pill to swallow isn't just that she let him go. It's knowing that he won't give her another chance. Number 6. She misses his unshakable confidence. She didn't notice it at first. She was used to men who needed her validation, men who sought approval, who bent to her emotions, who crumbled when she pulled away. It was normal for her to be the one in control, the one deciding when to give or withhold attention. But the Sigma, he never played that game. He didn't seek her approval. He didn't need constant reassurance. He was whole, with or without her. And while she once mistook that for arrogance, she now sees it for what it really was: power. a kind of power that made him untouchable, impossible to manipulate, and dangerously attractive. At the time, she didn't appreciate it. She thought she wanted someone more emotionally expressive, someone who made their feelings obvious. But what she found instead were men who were too easy to figure out, too predictable, too dependent on her reactions. Their neediness drained her. Their eagerness made them forgettable. None of them had the mystery, the strength, the unshakable confidence that the Sigma carried effortlessly. Now she sees the difference. She feels the absence of his energy, the way he moved, the way he spoke, the way he never tried too hard yet always stood out. It lingers in her mind, and the worst part, she knows she can't replace it. She had something rare, something that made her feel both excited and uncertain, something that kept her on edge in the best way possible. And she let it go. Number 7, she realizes he was her last safe haven. At first, she didn't recognize what she had. The Sigma was different, but she took it for granted. He never smothered her, never tried to control her, never made her feel trapped. Instead, he gave her space while still making her feel protected. He was steady, reliable, and unshaken by chaos. But because he didn't beg for her attention or try to possess her, she mistook his independence for indifference. She thought she could find that same sense of security elsewhere, maybe even in a man who was more emotionally expressive or more willing to bend to her moods. So she walked away, believing she was gaining freedom. But freedom without security is just loneliness in disguise. The moment life got difficult, the cracks in her new reality started to show. The people she surrounded herself with were unreliable. The attention she once enjoyed felt empty. The men she thought could replace him lacked his presence. No one else made her feel truly safe, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally. And as the world around her grew colder, she found herself longing for the warmth she had once rejected. With him, she had never felt suffocated, yet she always felt safe. His silence spoke louder than words, his actions carried weight, and his presence alone made her feel protected, even when he wasn't trying. But now, that presence is gone, and for the first time she understands what she lost. She didn't just lose a man. She lost her last safe haven, and now, no matter where she turns, nothing feels quite like home. Number 8. His detachment becomes a psychological obsession. She never expected to think about him this much. When she walked away, she assumed he would linger in the background, waiting, hoping, ready to chase if she ever gave him the chance. But instead, he did something that shook her to her core. He did nothing. No messages, no reaction, no effort to reclaim what they had. He detached completely. And that silence, it got to her. At first she brushed it off, told herself it didn't matter, that she had moved on. But the longer he stayed distant, the more her mind started working against her. Why wasn't he reaching out? Why didn't he seem affected? How could he be so unbothered? The lack of attention started eating at her. The more he ignored her, the more she felt the need to be seen by him again. She found herself checking his social media, looking for signs of weakness, waiting for a post that hinted at regret. But all she saw was a man moving forward, completely untouched by her absence. And that was unbearable. She tried to fill the void with distractions, with other men, with temporary thrills, but nothing worked. His detachment became an obsession. She wasn't drawn to him because she missed what they had. She was drawn to the fact that she no longer had power over him. And now, she's trapped in a mental game she can't win. Because the harder she tries to reclaim his attention, the more she realizes the truth. He has already let her go. Number 9. He triggered her deepest insecurities. She thought she had control. She was used to being the one who decided when things ended, the one who left men lingering in her shadow, the one who always had the upper hand. But this time was different. He walked away first. No hesitation, no second thoughts, no last words. And now she can't stop questioning why. At first, she told herself he was just another man, that it was his loss, that she would move on, that she had plenty of options. But something about his absence felt different. It wasn't just a breakup. It was a disruption to her entire sense of self. Why didn't he fight for her? Why didn't he chase? Why wasn't he shattered by the loss the way other men had been? The questions began to haunt her. Because if he could leave so effortlessly, was she ever really that important to him? The thought alone was unbearable. She had always believed she was unforgettable, that she had a lasting effect on the men in her life. But now, staring at the silence he left behind, she was forced to question everything. And that's what cuts the deepest. Not just the loss of him, but the loss of certainty in herself. He exposed something she had never confronted before, the possibility that she was not as irreplaceable as she once believed. And now, no matter how much she tries to shake it off, she can't escape the doubt he left behind. Number 10. She knows she lost something irreplaceable. She may try to convince herself otherwise, but deep down, she knows the truth. She lost something she will never find again. At first, she believed she had options, that men like him weren't as rare as they seemed. Maybe she thought she could replace him with someone more emotionally available, someone easier to control, someone who didn't carry that unshakable sense of self that made him both intoxicating and impossible to manipulate. But the more she searched, the clearer it became. There was no one like him. Other men either needed too much validation, lacked depth, or simply didn't have the same quiet dominance that made him stand out. They were predictable, easy to impress, easy to understand. And with each disappointing encounter, the realization hit her harder. She had taken him for granted. She never fully understood what she had when he was there. She assumed his presence was a given, that his silence meant nothing, that his ability to walk away so easily was just an act. But now she understands. His silence wasn't indifference, it was self-respect. His ability to detach wasn't coldness, it was strength. And his lack of regret? It was the final proof that he was the prize all along. Now, no matter how much she tries to move forward, she carries the weight of that realization with her. She let go of something irreplaceable, and that's a regret that never fades. Number 11. The attention she left for was fleeting. She believed she was making the right choice. Maybe she thought she could do better. Maybe she got bored, or maybe she just wanted to see what else was out there. Whatever the reason, she walked away, confident that excitement and passion were waiting for her on the other side. At first, it felt like freedom. The attention was immediate. New men eager to impress, to flatter, to make her feel special. They showered her with compliments, gave her the validation she thought she was missing, and for a while, she convinced herself she had won. But something felt off. The words sounded sweet, but they had no weight. The gestures were predictable, the conversations empty, the effort forced. These men said all the right things, yet none of it felt real. With the Sigma, there was no need for performance. His presence alone commanded respect, and his energy pulled her in without effort. These new men? They were trying too hard. The thrill faded faster than she expected. The same men who once seemed exciting became exhausting. They lacked direction, lacked substance, lacked the quiet strength that had made the Sigma so different. She traded depth for surface-level attention, and now she could feel the difference. Then it hit her. The attention she chased was meaningless. It wasn't connection, it was just noise. The Sigma never had to chase, never had to prove himself, and that's exactly why he stood out. Now she craved that energy again, but it was too late. She left for something she thought was better, only to realize she had downgraded. And when she looks back, she knows the truth. She didn't leave him for something better. She left him for an illusion. A Sigma male is not the kind of man a woman can forget. She may leave, convinced that she can find better, that his silence means indifference, that his ability to move on so effortlessly is just a facade. But time has a way of revealing the truth. And the truth is, he was the rarest kind of man, the one she never truly understood until he was gone. She comes back not out of love, but out of realization. She thought she had control, only to find herself trapped in a mental war she never expected. She thought he would break, only to watch him rise even higher. She thought she could replace him, only to discover that men like him are 1 in a million. She doesn't return because she suddenly sees his worth. She returns because she finally sees her mistake. But a Sigma male doesn't live in the past. He doesn't hold on to what no longer serves him. When he walks away, it's because he knows his value, and he refuses to waste it on someone who couldn't see it when it mattered. That is his power. To the Sigma men out there, never doubt your worth. Never entertain those who only appreciate you in hindsight. Keep moving forward, keep thriving, and let them watch from a distance. Because the ones who couldn't respect you when they had you don't deserve a second chance when they realize what they lost. Thank you for watching. God bless you.